muchachitos. It's Mrs. Kate. I'm sorry I can't be here with you today, but thanks to the magic of technology, I can actually go through some stuff with you and give you a bit more personalized instruction, even though I'm absent, which I'm looking forward to being able to do. That way you guys get to do more interesting work, work that's better aligned with what we're actually doing in class as opposed to just boring, busy work. So let's go through some stuff in your workbook. This is work from the Peardeck you guys did last class while I was doing the speaking grades. So I need you to find this page. We did activity 11 over pides o preguntas. And let me just double check that in the workbook. That was page 88, activity 11. So I have it up here on the screen for you. Here's the answer key. I told you you could use a page in your textbook for reference. And what that page talked about was the difference between preguntar and pedir. They both mean to ask, but they have very different uses and they're not interchangeable. Preguntar is if you're asking a question, you're just asking for information. What time is it? What are the specials today? Are you allergic to anything? What time does my favorite program start? Basic stuff like that. You're just looking for information to ask a question. Pedir is if you're requesting something from somebody, like a service, a good. If you're asking someone for something, that's the difference. So let's take a look at your workbook. The first one, number 1, voy a pedir pescado en el restaurante. Okay, we used pedir because you're asking for fish in the restaurant. You're not asking about the fish in the restaurant. Restaurant is a good indicator that you're probably going to use pedir because usually in a restaurant you're asking for something or requesting something. And we use the form pedir because we have voy a conjugated right here, and we don't conjugate a verb that comes right after voy a. Voy a pedir, I'm going to ask for. Número 2, quiero. We start with quiero, so we know whatever verb comes after it, we're not going to conjugate. I want to ask Eduardo, ¿a qué hora es la fiesta? I want to ask him what time the party is. This is just looking for information. I'm not requesting anything from Eduardo. I'm not asking him for an invitation or to take me to the party. I'm just looking for a piece of information, and that is preguntar. And we have le on the end of it, the indirect object pronoun, because we're asking Eduardo. Les pides tu dinero a tus padres. Dinero, money, and your parents. So you ask for money from your parents. Pedir. We're using pedir there because we're requesting something. We're asking for something. We want to receive something back. We want to get that money from our parents. We used pides because our subject is here. Tu, it's after the verb. A lot of times in a question, we put the subject after the verb. And the les is referring to a tus padres because you're asking for it from them. Les pides tu dinero a tus padres. That one's got a pretty different word order from English, so it might have been a bit confusing. Cuatro, I'm going to ask where Calle Alcazar is, where Alcazar Street is. That's looking for a basic piece of information. We're not requesting anything back. So we're just going to use preguntar. And we left preguntar alone because we conjugated voy a right in front of it. Mi hermano asks for permission siempre que quiere usar el coche de mis padres. He always asks for permission when he wants to use my parents' car. This one is pedir because we're looking to get something back, an actual thing back. In this case, he wants permission. He's not asking for a fact. He's asking for something. He's requesting permission. And we've got pide because it matches mi hermano. So a good time to remind you that pedir is a stem changer. It changes E to I in the present tense. Estamos hartos. We're fed up. Ellos siempre nos piden favores. We're fed up. They always ask for favors. Now that's something that they want. They want something back. So that's a request or asking for something. So we're using pedir and it matches ellos. The nos is there to saying they're asking for favors from us. They're asking us for favors. That's an indirect object pronoun. Your subject was actually ellos because they're the ones asking for the favors. Again, we stem changed E to I. Tu, you ask for what you want. That I'm going to answer you. Okay, you ask whatever you want, I'm going to answer. So whatever you want to ask, I'm going to answer. Tu preguntas lo que quieras. Preguntas because you're asking questions, I'm going to answer. Because we're talking about answering, we're looking more at preguntar versus pedir. Todo lo que tú pides, yo te lo voy a dar. Everything that you ask for, I'm going to give it to you. Okay, so we've got dar, which is to give. That's a big hint that someone's asking for something instead of just asking a question for general information. We have lo, which means it. Again, leading us to the idea that someone's asking for something back, requesting something versus just asking a question for information. And we've got tú right in front of the blank, pides. And that is that actividad. Next activity I want to go over is one that you did in your textbook. This was actividad 25. Es necesario que. You had to start each sentence with either es necesario que or es importante que. I don't care whichever one you use. That's a personal point of preference. What I do care about is how did you conjugate this verb. We've got, for example, number 1, nosotros no acelerar. Nosotros mirar. Ustedes tener cuidado. These all needed to be subjunctive conjugations. We started off with es necesario, like here in the modelo, es necesario que. That's my indicative action. It is necessary that you respect the traffic laws. It's necessary, that's a fact, but does that mean just because it's necessary, does that mean that you really are going to follow the traffic laws? Not necessarily. So that's why the second action is in the subjunctive, because it's the one that's not real, hasn't happened yet. So I'm going to go ahead and flip to the next slide. This shows you the answers. So for number 1, es necesario, and it said or importante que. In Spanish, we always separate indicative and subjunctive with the word que. Que nosotros no aceleremos en las curvas. It's necessary that we don't accelerate on curves. It's important that we don't accelerate on curves. So for the rest of these, the dot, 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 shows you that you could have started with either es necesario or es importante. The book's not showing you a right answer because, again, that's up to your opinion. What they are showing you is the que that would come after es necesario, es importante, and then the correct subjunctive conjugation for these prompts here. So dos, que nosotros miremos el mapa, that we look at the map, que ustedes tengan cuidado en el cruce de peatones, that you guys are careful on the pedestrian crosswalk, que yo no exceda la velocidad, that I don't exceed the velocity, que el conductor ceda el paso, that the driver yields, que usted no toque el claxon, that you don't hit the horn, que los conductores se abrochen el cinturón, that the drivers fasten their seatbelts, que todos conduzcan cuidadosamente, that everyone drives carefully. Conducir is a CIR verb, and CIR verbs change to ZCO in the present tense. Yo conduzco, kind of like conocer. We talked about these verbs way back in Unit 1. Conocer, conducir, producir. Verbs that end in CER or CIR go to ZCO in the present tense yo, which is important to note because you need that for forming the subjunctive. 9, que tú entres en la glorieta con cuidado, que yo pise el acelerador despacio. And those are my answers for that actividad. This last activity I asked you to do out of the textbook, it had 10 beginnings to a sentence and then 10 second parts to the sentence that you needed to put together in a way that made logical sense. So everything on the left over here, little pointer, everything over here, manda, desea, manda, no quieren, deseamos, no quieren, quieren, quiere, no quiere, no quiere. These are all indicative because these are all of my real actions. The instructor really is ordering. The tourism guide really wants. The police is really ordering. The drivers really don't want. These are all my indicative actions that are real, that are really happening, and so we use basic present tense for all of those. Everything on the right, A through J, these are the verbs that are going to become the subjunctive because they haven't happened yet. They're not real. They're ideas of actions. So let's start off with el instructor manda que, and that was H. Todos los estudiantes aprendan a manejar bien. 2, el guía de turismo desea que, and that answer was G. Los turistas compren, C-O-M-P-R-E-N, compren un mapa en el kiosco. 3, el policía manda que el conductor pague una multa. The policeman orders the driver to pay a fine. Now in English, I didn't say the word that, Even though Spanish always has the word que, Spanish always uses the word that, which means que, to separate the indicative and the subjunctive. English does that a lot, but not all the time. So take a look at number 3. The policeman orders the driver to pay a fine. The subjunctive looks very different in English than it does in Spanish. In Spanish, it's much more uniform. English has lots of different ways of expressing the subjunctive, but Spanish will always use que in between our indicative and our subjunctive. So, número 4. Los conductores no quieren que los policías les pongan una multa. Pongan. Pongo becomes pongan. The drivers don't want the police to give them a ticket. 5. Nosotros deseamos que we want que nuestros padres nos permitan usar el coche. We want our parents to allow us to use the car. Permitir becomes permitan. We're conjugating it to fit parents, not nos. Nos is the indirect object pronoun. We want them to allow us to use the car, and that's what nos is there for. Padres is my subject. Mis padres no quieren que, I'm on número 6, mis padres no quieren que mi hermano salga con el coche. My parents don't want my brother to leave with a car. Salga, for my brother. Número 7. Los estudiantes quieren que, letra E, el instructor tenga paciencia con ellos. The students want the instructor to be patient with them. Tenga, because it comes off of tengo, the present tense yo. 8. El peatón quiere que los conductores disminuyan la velocidad. He wants the drivers to diminish their speed, to slow down. Disminuyan, that's D-I-S-M-I-N-U-Y-A-N. Disminuyan la velocidad. El instructor no quiere que, the instructor doesn't want. F. Que yo ponga marcha atrás sin mirar. He doesn't want me to put it in reverse without looking. One of the things we notice about subjunctive in Spanish and English, it does not line up word for word Spanish to English, and that can be really tricky. Spanish is very uniform in how it presents the subjunctive. You always start with the indicative, manda, desea, manda, no quieren. You always have que, and then you have the subjunctive. English expresses this a lot of different ways. Sometimes we use the word that. Sometimes we use what sounds like an infinitive. But keep that in mind. They're not going to line up from one language to the other. And here's the answer key again for my visual learners so that you can see that. Aprendan, compren, pague, pongan, permitan, salga, tenga, disminuyan, pregunten, and ponga. Notice I'm saying these out loud a lot, and that's definitely something I want you to do too. We've talked about, and actually you've seen it in class, I found an error in what the book was teaching you about nosotros commands because it just sounded wrong to me. It just sounded wrong. And so I went looking and I found the right answer, and then I found why it was the right answer so I could teach it to you. So, and I still do this. As you hear, I'm still reading these words out loud. I'm building that skill in my ear to be able to recognize what's right and wrong just by hearing it, even if I don't know why it's right or wrong. And that's definitely a skill I want you to have. So every opportunity you get to say these out loud, say them out loud. It's great speaking practice, listening practice, and builds that skill of being able to self-edit and hear something and just know, yes, that's right because it sounds right, or no, that's wrong because it sounds wrong. Well, that's it for going over these 3 actividades. I have a feeling I'll see you soon in another video. Hasta luego.